Time for our top 10. And as I promised, it is a sporting one. You know, Balls is obviously big on its sport, and so is Travelz. We've talked previously about the top 10 unmissable sporting occasions. And this now is the top 10 unusual, traditional sporting occasions. The things that you might want to get out and go and see, not because they're thrill-a-week kind of spectacles, not because they're the biggest things your life will ever see. They're not World Cups, they're not the Olympics. They're just, well, strange. And things that you'll probably remember just because they are a bit different. So, here they are, the top 10 weird traditional sports that are worth a trip. At number 10, the Great Huon Apple Race in Huonville in Tasmania, Australia. Held every year in October, it basically involves hundreds of people standing on a large bridge and throwing apples off the bridge and watching them race 300 meters down the picturesque Huon River. It's in the middle of nowhere. The first person whose apple crosses the line wins this thing. Apparently it can get quite heavy on the gambling, quite heavy on the drinking, quite heavy on the, well, you know, it's Australia. What do you expect? And not only is it Australia, it's Australia's misfit province, the island of Tasmania off the south coast, where all the rumors are that the Tasmanians are shunned for being the wilder, naughtier, ruder, less civilized Australians, if you can picture such a thing. At number 9 is bog snorkeling in Wales. The bog snorkeling event, the premier one, the main one, is held in August each year along the dense Ween Rhyd Peat Bog near Llanford in Wales. And basically what it is, it's something that was conceived in 1976 by a bunch of drunks over a pint. And they decided that what you have to do is you have to grab a snorkel, dive into a bog, which is like a peaty bit of swamp, and try and make it through the bog as quickly as you can. The trick is obviously that it's overgrown, it's clammed, it's plenty mud, so it makes swimming 2 lengths of this thing, which is a mere sort of 110 meters, I think. I think the trench is about 55 meters in length. It's 110 meters the whole trip, but it takes a huge amount of time for people to fight their way through the bog. While on snorkels, you're not allowed to use a traditional swimming stroke either, which makes it quite difficult. And you have to also use flippers, which doesn't help in a situation where everything's overgrown. So it's quite a lot of fun. It's pretty funny. There's about 150 entrants each year. I think you can actually just go and enter that thing, as with the Apple Race. At number 8 is a thing called Kirkbanau. It's actually named after the area where it happens. It's basically oil wrestling. It's large men in Turkey. They cover themselves in oil, and they try and wrestle each other to the ground. If that's your kind of thing, Leon Petzer, I'm sure you're planning a trip as I speak. So yeah, Kirkbanau oil wrestling. Basically, the rules are that you've got to try and get a grip on your opponent and dump him into the earth. This is not possible because you're each covered in olive oil. Ha ha! Hilarity ensues, but it's large men doing this thing, so there is quite a bit of athletic skill involved as well. At number 7 is one that's just pure humor factor from my side, though you don't want to laugh out loud when you actually go there. It's the Redneck Games in East Dublin in Georgia, USA. You're not going to find a chessboard or any kind of thinking sport here. Basically, everything that happens there, every athletic, shall we put that in inverted commas, every athletic event that happens there is redneck, as you can imagine. Deep South kind of hillbilly inbred stuff. It's toilet seat tossing, seed spitting, mud belly flops into pools of muddy water. Yeah, it gets no attention, no endorsement deals, but it's well worth going simply for the hilarity. I'm not sure Nike is going to be spending too much on making sure that gets televised, but go home, go see what the inbred get up to. At number 6 is a thing called kabaddi. It's an ancient rural Indian sport. It started spreading throughout the rest of Asia, but it is mainly Indian. And what it is it's 2 teams of 7 people on a field that's roughly the size of a basketball court. What happens is that one person from Team 1 becomes the raider, in which they then have to hold their breath, run across the halfway line, and tag as many people as they possibly can while holding their breath. They have to prove that they're holding their breath by chanting kabaddi, 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 which is where the name of this sport comes from. You tag as many people as you possibly can. Those people are then out, and your team is then going. And it works a little bit like dodgeball, I suppose, in that then it's the other team's turn to send over a raider who has to then tag your team, bringing guys from his side back into the field. The attributes of a good kabaddi player: speed, power, and apparently big lungs. Makes sense. Right, now we get into the extra weird. Number 5, the Haxie Hood. Every January, the parish of Haxie in England goes a little bit crazy. What they do is they play a game called the Haxie Hood, in which they've been playing since the 14th century, so the 1300s. It's the oldest local tradition in England. To the spectator, the event is a little bit like watching a kind of a rugby scuffle. But what it basically is it's people chasing a leather tube, which represents the hood. And then this tube is people from various pubs try and get it into their pub, where it would then reside for the next year. But obviously, it's just a mad brawl as the people from the 4 different traditional pubs around town try and make sure that it's their pub that holds the glory for that given year. Apparently, it started when a noblewoman's hood blew off in the 1300s, and a group of peasants tried to win her favor by fighting over her hood and eventually returning it to her. And she decided to grant them land because she'd been so amused by the whole process. She decided to grant them land, and that's where this whole thing started. So it's still happening to this day. At number 4 is also England. England seems to be the winner of these sorts of things. It's the shin kicking contest in the Cotswolds. They were started back in 1612 by Captain Robert Dover. And basically what it is it's a small part of a large traditional games festival. You'll find tug of war, obstacle races, wrestling, and a bunch of weird stuff. But the reason people go and watch this thing is for the shin kicking competition, in which you're allowed to stuff straw up your trousers to try and protect your shins, and then you put on a pair of steel capped boots. Your opponent does the same, and the two of you kick at each other's shins until one of you is so badly bruised they can't take it anymore, and the winner moves on to the next round. The festivities apparently close with a huge bonfire, drinking, fireworks displays, and a procession through the shoot town. There's Morris dancing and all that other kind of traditional medieval good fare. So if you're not actually into the shin kicking, maybe you can just go and drink mead and get drunk and watch other people act like idiots. At number 3 is a thing called land diving. This is something that actually inspired bungee jumping. It's the Pentecost Islanders in Vanuatu who have been practicing this form of bungee jumping for a long, long time. Apparently, it's a traditional fertility rites ceremony for males, some of whom were as young as 7, so I'm not sure how fertile they actually are. But what they do is they tie a supple liana vine to their ankles and jump from a height of 20 to 30 meters. And the aim is to be the person who jumps the closest to the ground, so the one who comes the actual closest to dying. Apparently, there have been a lot of incidents over the years in which people have been badly maimed, as you would from jumping from 30 meters, being roughly 10 stories head first towards the ground with a vine tied around your ankles. So yeah, that's an interesting one, and one of the more kind of, I suppose, almost respectable in its craziness traditions. Number 2 is cheese rolling. You may have heard of this thing. It happens in Cooper's Hill in Gloucester in England every year. People gather with a 7-pound roll of cheese. That's roughly 3 kilos, and they try and roll their cheese down the hill. The aim of the competition is to roll your cheese to the bottom of the hill with you following it in any way you can. The cheeses, though, can travel at up to 30 miles an hour, so roughly 50 kilometers an hour, with the participants following at roughly the same speed, because you only win when your cheese and you cross the line. If you want to see people get themselves badly hurt chasing a cheese rolling, that's the thing you've got to go and see. And number 1 is a very strange one. It's called buzkashi. It's played on horseback. It's a little bit like polo, except that there's one critical difference. Instead of playing with a wooden mallet and a ball, participants use their hands and the carcasses of a cow or goat. Each team consists of 10 players, 5 of which are in play at any given time, and the players score by dragging a carcass across the opposing team's goal line. Given the fact that this is played with a dead animal, you can imagine it gets kind of wild. The participants, there's basically no rules. The participants tear into each other on horseback, and it's basically like watching an old Mongol battle, I would imagine. People get hurt every single year. So these are our top 10 things that if you're looking for some different kind of a sport to attend. Number 10, the Great Huon Apple Race in Australia. Number 9, bog snorkeling in Wales. Number 8, Kirkpinar oil wrestling in Turkey. Number 7, the Redneck Games in Georgia, USA. Number 6, Kabaddi in India. Number 5, the Haxie Hood in England. Number 4, shin kicking in England. Number 3, land diving in Vanuatu. Number 2, cheese rolling in England. Number 1, buzkashi, which you can find actually played in most Central Asian countries. So that was it. That was Travelz for the week.